It's not me. Hi, and welcome all of our friends who are joining us for another session of the Premed Office Hours, where we answer your questions live in this session. My name is Courtney Lewis. I will be, moderating for this session, and I am a prior director of admissions from a med school in New Mexico, and this will be my first cycle, not matriculating students, but I'm excited about match day coming up in just a couple of weeks from now and getting to see where some of my prior students are going. I am joined by our co-founder of MAPT, Miss Rachel Grubbs. Hello, Rachel.
I have a window open, so I'm getting like the strategic sling beyond.
Got that supermodel blow going on.
Hi, friends. It's me. I'm here to give pre-med advice and also channel my inner Selena.
Yeah, well, and you need the fan because apparently it's very warm there.
It's crazy warm. It's not. This is not what Ohio in February is meant to be.
Yeah. Well, Seattle's getting sunshine too, so the world must be ending here sometime soon.
And while it lasts.
Yep. And we also have Dr. Wright with us. Hello, Dr. Wright. What is the weather like where you are?
Can you tell that my fan is on too? I'm blowing in the breeze.
Your lustrous locks.
Right.
Do that head shake.
Just want to make that clear. Yeah. No, I'm doing really well. I'm excited about today and answering all these questions, and also excited about the work that we're doing with students in this current cycle, and both in last cycle, a lot of them are still getting in and stuff like that. And then in this coming cycle, getting everybody ready. And these are exciting days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hope that some of you don't just, once you get in, we still want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
We want the updates. We want the emails. We want to celebrate with you. So hopefully you're still logging on to join us, but we'll go to the live questions. So no matter what platform you're on, go ahead and send them our way and we will try to get to them while we're here. Okay, so Jawad, I used to be a scribe but failed due to slow typing. I then became a patient sitter where I have been since June 2022. Should I continue with the sitter job until June 2023 or can I jump ship to Scribe? Thanks. So who wants to take this one? Because it seems the jumping ship to Scribe, has something changed in the meantime, or is it a different Scribe company? Would be my first question.
Yeah, Jawad did do this follow-up too. I missed how intellectually stimulating a scribe was and being with a physician. That's why I asked.
Got it. Well, viewed slightly differently, right? Depending on what school and what the admissions committee is seeing. I hear mixed reviews on Scribe.
Yeah.
But
scribing is often, scribing very passive in terms of clinical activities. It kind of depends on the physician that you're with in terms of how that might play out, how engaged they are with you and how engaged they make you with the patient. So a lot of times it's just very passive. And so I understand the intellectual stimulation part, and I certainly don't discourage Jawad from doing what you suggested. But I would say think carefully about what you're looking for. If you're just looking for intellectual stimulation, that thing, my is you also looking for motivation, and you need to be looking for this patient contact and stuff.
Yeah. Is he choppy for you as well, Rachel?
Yeah, Scott's. Okay. I think I picked up what he was laying down, but the audio was in and out a little bit.
I know that he was.
I'm gonna try to reboot.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to reboot.
Yeah, and so I think this was part of what Jawad was saying, but or what Scott was saying, and I'll sort of chime in, is like, if you liked scribing, I like scribing. As people said, sometimes it's like slightly divisive as clinical because it is essentially shadowing on steroids. I still think it should count as clinical, even though it's passive, just because it's such great exposure. So that part, if you think you're a faster, better typer now and you want to be a scribe, go for it. What makes me slightly nervous is you're saying that you miss how intellectually stimulating it was. You miss with being with a physician. Again, you don't have a lot of space here to comment. You don't have to answer me. But what I'm wondering is like, are you not liking hanging out with patients? Because if that's the case, that's a bigger, deeper question you need to reflect on, right? Because doctors don't spend all day talking to doctors, unlike Grey's Anatomy might have you believe, right? Like I mean, Shonda, I've seen Shonda interview. She was like, the whole point is the residents are selfish. They make all the problems about them. Like she understands that's not how real life physicians are supposed to behave. And, so I just think you need to do a little soul searching on that. You want to change up your scribe or your clinical experience, go for it. I just want to make sure that you also like the patient part, because that's what life will be like after this.
Agreed. And being a patient sitter, I know you're somewhat limited in, the types of discussions that you can have, but there should be some where you're interacting with the patient and not just sitting there. But I think, it's up to you and what you want to do. And if something has changed to where you could pick up another job and your record doesn't show that you're hopping from one to the next pretty often, then I pick your path, right? Pick your journey. What is going to provide you with what you feel you need to move forward?
Yeah, great.
Next question, if we have one. Okay, Jacob, do you think it is worth applying to medical school with a sub-500 MCAT score? Wow, what a tough question to try to answer right now with not a lot of information to go off of. I can say personally, I have matriculated people with sub-500 scores, and they, buckled down. They did well in med school. They matched well. There were other things in their application that would indicate that they were going to be able to handle the rigors of medical school. And so it wasn't just looking at the MCAT score in isolation. I think, the things that we're going to look at as directors or evaluators are going to be how many times you've taken it. Is it a sub-500 and you've taken it 4 times? Is it just your first take? Are you still a full-time student? Was there a class missing? Are you working full-time? Kind of looking at the full and complete picture of the information that's submitted on your application will all go into consideration with your MCAT score. Are you more competitive with, a score that's above the 50 percentile? More than likely, but there are plenty of people above a 500 who don't make it into med school. So it's not a thing in isolation.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
You covered that well.
Hopefully that helps. Okay. Carmen, does taking care of my little brother who has some medical conditions count as clinical experience? Anybody else want to take over chatting?
Scott, you want to do this and we'll make sure your audio's good?
Yeah. Is this a little bit better?
Much
yeah,
better.
Much
okay,
better.
Good. Sorry about that. I don't know what was happening.
Happens.
Several questions that I have about taking care of your little brother. How much of your time in taking care of your little brother is dealing with these medical conditions? That would be the first question that I have. I think it also can, depending on what the medical condition is. I think that's, part of the question that I would have. I think that another thing that I wonder about is do you have any other clinical experience to supplement this that would be more traditional in orientation? So those are questions that I would have. Yes, it could count as clinical experience, but I think it definitely depends on certain factors and how you describe it and what you say about it to help the admissions committee to understand why you're viewing this as a clinical experience.
Yep.
Agreed.
I know I've definitely seen people who have had to take on care of family members, and it can count. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Alma, hello. I'm a non-traditional student, graduated in 2018. I'll be enrolled as Postbac given that I have a graduate degree in chemistry, how many post-bac hours do you suggest I take? Thank you. These are
Good
some tough
question,
questions.
right?
Okay, let's try to break this down. How long, these are the types of questions, and maybe these will help you kind of answer the question since we may need a bit more information, but my mind, and please feel free to input Rachel and Scott, my mind immediately goes to these types of questions. Okay, so if you graduated in 2018, you're enrolled as a postbac. When did you do your master's? What's the time frame you're looking at? If you're enrolled in a postbac, is it a certificate program or is it just you're kind of piecing it together? Why are you doing a postbac? If you did a graduate degree in chemistry, that leads me to believe that you have science coursework and you may just be looking for a GPA booster, but at a certain point, you're only going to be able to move the mark so far. So I'm kind of wondering what the thought process is and why you're doing post-bac work after a master's degree, from what it sounds like, and what the time frame looks on that, what you're hoping to gain.
Yeah, all the same questions. And Alma, I wanted to just chime in with sharing a screen of maps. So this is one of our demo accounts. You can see we've cleverly named it Postbac Demo. So this is a case of someone who maybe did need some postbac work because you can see here, if you look at their class standing science GPA, that although freshman year they had a 3.5, then they had a 3.19, 3.0, did go back to a 3.49 senior year, but only with like 8 credits of science, right? So this particular example did another 20 hours of post-bac work, and I'm looking at class sitting science GAPA, so maybe they even did more hours, but it was 21 hours of science-specific post-bac work. Not even so much to raise the GPA probably, but just more to show, hey, yeah, I had a blip with sciences in the middle of college and I'm back on track. With you, what we're missing is what's your motivation, right? Like I think a lot of people just think a post-bac is a cure-all, right? They hear this myth that courses expire, which is, like, I understand there's a nugget of truth in that, and that if you haven't been a student for a very long time, med schools may worry about whether or not you have those skills, but that's not the same as courses expiring. You have a graduate degree in chemistry, like, yeah, I think you need to think harder about what it is you're trying to get out of the post-bac.
Agreed. Yep.
And use MEPT because we can help you there.
It's true. All right. The Llama Squad was here a couple of months ago. I remember the name, actually, the Llama Squad. And the fact that you don't have a llama as your profile picture.
I remember that too. Yes.
But congratulations on getting into medical school. You're going to be a doctor, which is fantastic.
Yay.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
If we were Ryan, we would have the little applause noise.
Yeah. We need some funfetti to fall into our screen. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your happy story.
Back and sharing.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, Sebastian. So this might be a weird question. Ooh, I'm ready for it. But can I put EMT experience in my activity section that wasn't in my actual EMT job, but rather a car crash that happened off duty that I helped out in? Thanks. Interesting question. I've never heard this one.
I think I would probably put it in the context of your EMT experience activity and maybe have it as one of your most meaningful so that you could talk about this off-duty experience. You were still an EMT, you were off-duty, but your identity as an EMT was still there. And so I would put it within the context of that.
100%. My mind just got there right behind you. I think that would be an excellent way to show how it's not only on your job, but in your free time, it actually helps, and you can step up and be a first responder when duty calls, even if it's outside of your job. That could be a really excellent way, I think, to follow that.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
Technically, yes, you can use it. just like somebody who is maybe trained as a nurse, but also has to come home and take care of somebody at home, a family member, things like that, where they're technically not getting paid, but it is still clinical experience, very similar to the last question. So, but that could be a great, most meaningful experience. I agree.
Cool.
Deandra, thank you for all of your help. Should I disclose being a mother if asked, tell me about yourself? Would that be seen as a disadvantage or a strength? First off, I feel very strongly about this one, even though I'm not a mother. That is a protected non-discrimination category. So you cannot be discriminated against if you have a family or those circumstances. So this is something you should feel very safe with and should not be afraid to disclose. This is, I've had plenty of parents as students who were able to balance this. This is not something that should even be in the consideration, especially as a negative. So that would be my take on this. Feel free to disclose if you're comfortable with it. It's probably a huge part of your life. It's going to affect how you manage your time and go about things. I've had mothers and fathers. Dr. Wright, it sounds like you've had the same thing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, this should not be something that you feel worried about disclosing, and you are protected in not being discriminated against from that.
And as a matter of fact, I'll give you just a short anecdote. 1 year at Southwestern, we had an applicant who was a mother, and she actually was in her 40s, and she got into the medical school and was the president of her class all 4 years, and just a star student. And so don't at all, number one, think that this is going to be necessarily limited in terms of your ability to be successful in medical school. And this is a huge part of your identity. And if in that in and of itself says to me that you can't ignore it in the application process.
Yep. But it, in the tell me about yourself, it would be natural to disclose that.
Absolutely.
And so just do it, and don't be afraid to do that. We're all understanding. We have, most of us probably have at least some parents in our classes already that either become parents when they are in med school or were parents before. So you're okay. Strong backing in that one. Okay, Dallas, non-trad student here, currently working as a software engineer. I'm going back to school to complete my missing prereqs, biochem, etc. Is it worth seeking a second degree or just do the prereqs? Anybody want to take it?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things related to this. One is that it's not, the medical school is not necessarily going to care one way or another whether you have a second degree or whatever. They're going to be looking at what you've done and the strength of the academic work that you've done. That's going to be the most important part of this, of what you're doing. And the accumulation of how many hours, it's also going to depend a little bit on how you did originally in your coursework, in your engineering degree. I'm assuming you've got an engineering degree. So that's the first thing I would say. Now, secondarily, and this is not an unimportant issue, is for financial aid at undergraduate institutions. If you're not a degree-seeking student, you don't get any financial aid. You're not eligible for anything. And so often we have postbac students who declare a major as a second degree seeking student, not with the intention of getting a degree, but that allows them, it's a little bit of a loophole or whatever, but it allows you to get financial aid in a way that where you can finance that extra, the postbac hours and stuff. So that's unrelated to how the admissions committee is going to view it and stuff, but it is related to your own personal, finances and stuff like that. So, but in terms of my feeling, Courtney, I'd be interested on your thoughts on this too. Is that getting a second degree or not is not going to be relevant to most admissions committees.
Agreed. I think that as somebody who is considered non-traditional and you're kind of going back for the prereqs, I would want to see kind of the course load that you're taking. If you're working full-time, we understand that that's going to be lower. But if you're going back to school more full-time or you're dropping down half-time work, you'd want to see a little bit higher course load. If possible, we understand people have lives. But again, we're looking at all of the data points and not just one in isolation. And then how that work carries over into your MCAT. I would not take the MCAT before you've taken the appropriate courses and make sure that you manage your time well and you study appropriately for that and don't just take it. Because I think a lot, whether it's correct or not, we don't have, the data for this, but I think a lot of admissions committees will be quick to tie foundational knowledge from the prereqs into that first time MCAT take and see if there's correlation in that, especially for non-trads if you're taking a smaller course load. So I think it would be in your best interest to go about it very strategically and methodically and make sure you're balancing your time well and your study for that. But I agree, as far as a additional degree versus just kind of piecemealing your postbac together, that part's not going to be a huge component in whether or not. But I do like the insight in that helping with financial aid. That's not something that I thought of. That could make a pretty big difference in how you're able to take these classes and where. All right, RM. I have wanted to go to medical school for a long time. However, I feel I should give up on this dream because my family doesn't support it and creates obstacles through various demands. Your thoughts? This is your life. Ideally, not trying to be insensitive, ideally, we would have the support of our family. It makes things a lot easier, but you're just not always going to have that. And even if you do have that, for people who do have support, they don't always fully understand the demands of this path and this journey, and the academic side, the mental side, the physical side, the spiritual side. So you're just going to have to rely on yourself and maybe your peers and the other support system that you could build. It doesn't have to be your family. You can make your own support system. And so if this is something that you want to do, if it's within your means and what you really want to do, go for it. It's going to be difficult, right? And you may feel a little bit lonely at times and wish that you had more support from your family, but that doesn't mean that you'll always be without. Rachel, I know that you are great at offering words of encouragement too in this regard.
Thanks.
Yeah,
RM, I think, I'm sure lots of people have the initials RM, but I feel like you've been coming to these pre-med office hours, I think, since we were calling them Ask the Dean, right? So you've been a pre-med that I've been aware of for several years. And I think it could be another RM. So it seems like you've been in this for a while and you want it. And if it's your dream, then yeah, you may have to do a little bit of found family work, right? You may have to find some pre-meds in the pre-med hangout who are also feeling isolated from their families. And I know there are some, because some of them have confided in me. Obviously, I'm not going to out them, but if you guys can maybe form a little support group. It's challenging because I don't know how tied your life is to your family, right? So like if they still help you pay rent and they say part of you having your rent covered is you have these obligations to our family that make it hard for you to be pre-med, then it gets a lot trickier, right? And I can't advise on that because there's so many if-thens. But to the extent that you can provide for yourself or find negotiated compromises, right? I'll take care of my little brother and sister on these days, but I need this day away at the library. And no, I can't study at home because I never get studying done at home, right? That's such a common issue where families are like, you just look like you're sitting in front of your computer. You're like, I'm doing some of the hardest mental work known to humans, So sometimes you have to leave to go study. So I think I mean, I'm not going to tell you to give up your dream. I'm not ever going to tell anyone to give up their dream. That's your choice. But yeah, you may have to try to think about breaking it down into smaller pieces. So maybe they don't have to support your dream, but they have to respect your time on certain days that you have to carve out for your own, right? Like, can you work on those like smaller wins with them? Good luck.
Yeah, good luck, RM.
All right, Jonathan, what counts as a non-science letter of rec? I usually hear about English, psych, etc., but would a letter from an ERPS and
phytochemicals,
phytochemical nutrition class count? I wanted to make sure I was going to say that right, even though I know.
I think it's
yeah. Okay. Sure. I've never heard of that class. The nutrition part, I understand. And if it's more a naturalistic type class, mixing in herbs and chemicals for nutrition, I would say sure.
Nods from Scott.
Yeah, I'd go for it. I mean, I think it's not in the traditional sort of hard science areas, and so I think, I'd go for it probably, especially if that's somebody that knows you really well.
Yeah, because nutrition generally isn't counted in that
Right.
core science GPA calculation if you're looking at how courses are categorized, which is So I would say more than likely.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
So while we're around the topic of letters of rec, can you guys see my screen again? Have to actually add it. There we go. Let's move Jonathan's comment just to create a little more room on the screen. Can you take that down, Veronica?
We do have people in the background helping us.
Yeah,
little industry magic here.
We're like, who's Veronica? Like, we couldn't live without her. That's who she is.
No,
Why
exactly.
does this choose your map plan? That's not right. Oh, because this kid doesn't. Because I'm in Postbac demo, and Postbac demo doesn't have access to my LORs. Okay, so my LORs is a paid feature, but basically, if you sign up for Map Pro, which already includes all the amazing stuff of free mapped plus unlimited mapped app advising. So advising within the app where you're asking us questions and answering. Yeah, with your beloved Courtney and Scott and Veronica and me and Ryan. But so anyway, now we also are doing LOR management. So this is our answer to Interfolio. There are other services out there. We are building these with pre-health students in mind. So it's early days. Those of you that have been around Mapped and MSHQ for a while know we love to put stuff out there and iterate. So I think it's good. I think it's going to get a whole lot better. But as you're thinking about letters of rec, this is the main thing I want to communicate to you is you do not want to wait until April or May, because that's when all professors get asked and they're slammed. That's already a busy time of year on top of all the letter of rec requests. So I strongly recommend, however you're doing your letter of rec storage, that you get a place to securely store them. Ask sometime in this winter or early spring to give your letter writer, a good 3 or 4 weeks to get back to you with a high quality letter, and then securely store them until they're ready to go to the applications. And my LORs is one great way to do that.
We are slowly but surely becoming the hub for you guys so that you don't have to utilize all of these different things.
You figured out my master plan.
Yeah. Well, with all of our years combined, you would think we have all dealt with all of these different pieces and all of the different nuances of the platforms, and this is going to be a lot easier for you guys. So we want it. You guys want it. We're building it. We are building it. Okay. But yes, LORs, I agree. Okay, best tip for someone accepted to a research summer program.
Have fun.
Do your best. It's a great experience. If you think that you're going to need a letter of recommendation at the end of it, if this is going to be one of your science or one of your non-science letters, or you're going to need something from your PI, make sure that you're putting in the face time, you're doing the work, you're showing up on time, you're not making a lot of silly mistakes, and try to learn from it. If it's, wet lab or bench or clinical or psych or whatever it is, try to make the most of it, and good for you. That's great. I mean,
the only other thing I'd add is journal, make notes so you remember
Yes.
it.
Yes, that's a good one.
Journal about
Yes.
Western blot, right? Like
Yes.
when you're writing research essays, we are not looking for the tiny little level of detail of your day-to-day wet lab experiences. We want to know what you're studying and how it's going to impact humanity.
Yep.
Think about talking to an elderly auntie, right? Someone you love and respect, but who doesn't have science background. How would you talk about the research to them?
Yeah.
That's probably how it's going to show up in your application essay.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was just going to say, and also journal about what your experiences are with your colleagues, with your PI, with, what is this teamwork about to you, and what are you learning about the people that you're working with? That's very positive and beneficial as well.
Where should they be doing all that journaling?
I think MAP is probably a good place.
Yeah, that's one place. All right, look at that.
Huh.
You can also do it in a spreadsheet, in a paper notebook, whatever you want, but Mapped is free, and you can log your hours and do your journaling all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Quick plug.
Well, and I've started implementing what Dr. Wright's been telling people now for a long time is make sure you get the content that's going to help you answer the what and the so what when you are writing your experience descriptions, because that's what we're going to want to know when you turn in your application. So make sure that what you're journaling is going to help you in writing that little essay narrative for us so that we're getting the content that we need. Thank you for breaking that down, Dr. Wright, so that we can all utilize that, the what and the so what for your experience section.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple of tips. A little bit better than have fun is maybe the journaling.
I stand by have fun.
Wait a minute.
And thinking about letters of recommendation. Those are two good tips. So hopefully that helps. Okay. All right, Renee, 49-year-old RN here with a lot of science credits, but they're older credits. I want to go back to school for either physical assistant or medical school. Help, LOL. Okay, well, very different timelines you're talking about with both of those professions, and then different outcomes, right? Different roles. I'm sure as an RN, you understand a lot of the nuances of each of those different professions. So ultimately, it's always going to be up to you, but can we give her some questions to maybe ask herself to help her determine what she wants to do? This is a topic that actually comes up a lot, PA versus med school. Mm-hmm. I think Ryan, if he was on, he'd have, pre-med years podcast such and such at 34 seconds. I know he's given that to me before, actually.
I found it.
So, okay, perfect.
Yeah, I don't have the memories like Ryan does, but I'm a real quick Googler.
Perfect.
Session 254. Yeah. So premedyears.com/254, MD versus PA. Let's talk about it with a PA to help you decide.
Yep. So
and that PA is our good friend, Savannah Perry.
Yeah, she's great. And she's the Ryan of, of the PA world. So you understanding kind of the differences in both, I would say the academic journey is going to be likely pretty different time-wise and, just the length to complete it. But then the roles on the back end are very different as well. So what's your personality, right? Do you like kind of task-oriented things where a PA, you can kind of go in, you fulfill what you need to do, you kind of move on? I know task-oriented people tend to like that aspect because it's very hands-on and you're doing that. They also like that they get to jump around to different specialties, right? Mm-hmm. It's not where you go to residency, you kind of train for one particular thing and more than likely you stay within that realm. It may kind of grow and expand in some ways, but that's kind of your hub or your area of expertise and training. And so if you are a PA, you can kind of jump between specialties. Cost of the academics is going to be different as well. Both are needed and, are very challenging and, but if, I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to have somebody telling me what to do forever. Technically, as a PA or a physician, there's always going to be somebody up the chain that's going to tell you what to do. So I wouldn't take that into consideration. But
I completely agree. And I hear that a shocking amount.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what, you don't think the hospital administrator who got an MBA is going to tell you what to do?
They're going to tell you how many patients they want you to see, how many RVUs, and how they're going to do protocol, and HR is going to tell you stuff. Or it's going to be the politicians that don't have medical background training that are going to change something in the state that will trickle down and affect you. So that maybe isn't something to take into consideration, because it's going to be that. But depth of knowledge, academics, funding, timeline, anything else?
I would just say keep in mind that the pattern of experience to school is different, right? So sometimes people forget that to get into PA school, you're expected to have much more substantial clinical experience and a much more robust list of prerequisite courses fulfilled. Now, Renee, you've shared you're a 49-year-old RN, so it sounds like you have tons and tons of clinical already. So that's excellent. That's going to help you. But the physician assistant schooling is shorter in some respects than the MDDO schooling. So they expect you to come to the table with more courses already taken. A lot of med schools recommend anatomy, but don't require it. Almost all PA schools require anatomy. So, and again, I don't think this is a right, wrong thing, but just keep in mind, like MD or DO, you get that degree and then you're a resident and you're working, but you're still training. And that's where a lot of the practical learning comes. Where with PA, there's an expectation of coming with lots of clinical experience, coming with more robust upper level undergraduate sciences. So it just sort of changes the flow of, is it some on the job training and then school and then more work? Or is it with med, there's some clinical, but that's a little bit more gray for med schools, where it's school and then a lot of official clinical on the job training. So you just have to keep in mind that the flow is different. And I think people sometimes forget that to apply to PA school, you actually have to have a lot more prereqs fulfilled.
Yeah, they're each competitive in their own right.
Yes.
And a lot of people want to do both of them. So don't think one is going to be easier than the other, because it's not.
True.
But hopefully that helps kind of what to reflect on and get you to where you're going to be able to answer that, because it's an important question, and it's one that you're going to need to make to distinguish between the two paths, because at some point they do diverge. So, Okay, let's do next question. We can fit in a couple more here. Michael repeated my EC writing feedback is, what skills did you learn that you will carry into being a physician, or talk how this will help me as a future physician? Should I follow this advice? Unsure. The advice for all from accepted students matriculating this fall. Okay. Sometimes they know the back end and sometimes they don't. So EC is extracurriculars, for those that are not understanding that abbreviation. So repeated in my extracurricular writing feedback is, what skills did you learn that you will carry into being a physician, or talk how this will help me as a future physician? So
I definitely want to let one of our directors of admissions answer this, but I'm going to quickly tackle this just from a medical school headquarters, co-owner and advisor standpoint, which is, no one in the pre-med advising business should be so arrogant as to think they have the lock on the only way to help you get into med school. right? So what you're describing here does not align with my philosophy or Ryan's philosophy. And we tend to hire people who agree with our philosophies and those big things, right? Like we want diverse answers. Or diverse answers. We want dissent because dissent leads to growth and passion and better outcomes for students. Mostly we believe in storytelling, not skills, right? So coming to us, that's probably not advice we'd offer, but that's not actually what you asked. You asked, should I follow this advice? I can't tell you that, man. Right? Like you could ask 10 advisors and you might not get 10 answers, but you might get 6 or 7 different answers. Mm-hmm. I would not try to follow everyone's advice. So ultimately, and I'm saying this again, I want to defer to the directors of admissions, but just as someone who's like created a company around a certain advising philosophy, you do not have to follow our advice if you don't like it, right? Ultimately, it's your application.
But we're pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. I'm just teasing.
Yeah, and I would say, I would add to that I think that one of the things that, Michael, you need to consider here is, are you talking about the idea of doing that on every one of your ECs? And if you do that, then it's going to sound contrived at some point or another. It's going to sound, if you're trying to say that you played baseball and you try to, and maybe a hobby that you play the guitar and how that applies to somehow that skill of playing the guitar applies to, your future as a physician. I mean, at some point this breaks down and it sounds ridiculous.
It does.
So I think you have to, it makes sense to do that in some things. Perhaps we don't really support the notion that everything has to always apply back to medicine. If you did something and you did it for pleasure, or even if you did a volunteer experience in a soup kitchen or something, it doesn't always have to have some applicable connection to your future as a physician. That's not necessarily what the medical schools are going to, that's not an expectation that they're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I 100% agree. And I almost don't want to see you try to work everything back into your path to physician, because then it seems a little self-serving. Like you're not just serving to serve, or you're not just doing things for yourself. You're doing things in a calculated way, always with a focus on that, not just having a well-rounded sense of self or things that you're involved in. And we tend to like people that have, a little bit of variance in their interests and things that they do to self-soothe and step away from academics or just out in the community. And not everything has to be about being a physician, because I 100% agree. It starts to be weird when you're reading that and you're trying to like make that connection. You're like, okay, that's a reach, and it just seems silly. Now, the ones that it is applicable, if you're talking about it for your clinical and stuff, you do still want to reflect on that actual experience and let it be what it was and what you learned in that time. You don't have to always say, even if it's clinical, and I'm going to take this with me as a physician, and this is what got me there. We want you to reflect as you learn what you learned, kind of leading up to this time point. So just sometimes let things be what they are, and talk about and reflect on what they were at that time. And that shows growth. So
absolutely.
Agreed.
Thanks for this question, Michael. Lots of learning there.
Great.
And I mean, it's pre-med students that get in, right? It's hard not to take their advice, right? They were successful, but there's so many things that they're not privy to that we kind of look at in balancing or evaluating students, or just other things going on. So grain of salt, obviously, they put together a polished application that really put their best foot forward. So somewhat helpful in a way, but not the end all be all, works for everybody kind of advice either.
Yeah.
And I just point out, also, we had a comment from this one right here. And I like this a lot. I think one takeaway is that different AgCom members will think different things, but these services provide aggregate feedback, which will give you the most value overall. And I like that comment a lot, that what we're trying to say is in aggregate, this is kind of the position that we have and that it works. There's going to be particular committees or particular members of a committee who will have a different opinion or who are going to look at it differently or whatever. And but we have to look at the sort of bigger picture. And so I like that, John. Great comment.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's exactly what we're going for.
Yep.
Well spoken.
Trying to get you away from anecdotes and into big picture patterns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Poor Amy Oscar. She's like, y'all put my comment up and then it went away. I didn't forget about you, friend. There you go. It took us a second, but we're back to you.
All right, Amy. Okay. I graduated last year with a GPA of a 3.59. I had 2 C- on my prereqs. My advisor told me that I could retake them at a city college after graduation. Will medical schools accept those grades? Yes, they'll accept them.
But
yeah.
I would say, one of my concerns here is I don't know what city college means.
Yeah.
If city college is a community college, I don't recommend that. In other words, you got a C- on a couple of prerequisites or whatever at your university. Now you're going to a community college to retake those. Even if you made an A in those, there are going to be some admissions committee members, perhaps some admissions officers, who are going to think, well, you didn't do well at a competitive, maybe potentially, not necessarily, potentially more difficult environment, and you backtrack to community college level to retake those. Now, are they acceptable? Yes. Is it optimal? Probably, maybe not.
Yeah, and we're just trying to provide some transparency here, right? Is that fair or right? That could be debated, but it's something that you would probably fairly frequently come up against as an opinion. And another thing, just to kind of add in, is to think about what helps build your foundation. These courses are rigorous, sometimes on purpose more rigorous than others, but this is foundational kind of core knowledge that you're going to build upon in schools. So taking it somewhere where, maybe it's faster paced, maybe it's not quite as challenging, is not really a service to you. Now, the city college could be right at the level of the 4-year institution. So we're not trying to steer you away from that, but you need to think about what the course will provide to you, because it's not just about the A. The A indicates an understanding and a retention of the material, which is important to med schools because it is built upon and you go at a very fast pace. And so just taking it somewhere else isn't necessarily going to give them the indication to remove that red flag, and may not help you since you're going to need this material on the MCAT. So you should look for something that challenges you, that is very difficult, but utilize maybe the resources, the learning center, tutors, office hours, supplemental courses that help you with it, because you're going to need this material not only on the MCAT, but also in med school, and you can never really forget it, because it's going to be something that is continued to be built upon for the rest of your professional life. And so yes, you could do that. It may be more affordable, and so sometimes that is the only option, but try to make the most of that course. It's not just about the A, it's about learning and retaining that material, making sure you understand it. So wherever you need to take that to really challenge yourself to get the most material, I would say go with that option.
Agreed.
Andrew B. I'm TMD SAS, so we won't let Scott answer for this one, obviously. Waiting for match day. Question is, if I don't get in, should I continue shadowing if I already have a good amount of hours? I work full-time currently, so schedule something is tough.
I guess I'm going to answer this question.
You're up.
Put the camera
so-
on you. I was like, oh.
You're up.
So, Andrew, so the question is really if you don't match on match day, and should you continue doing what you're doing? And the question really here more so is, you said you have a good amount of hours in shadowing. The key about shadowing, I think, is that it's very passive most of the time. Sometimes you get some clinical contact in there, but it's
Are we losing him
I
again?
think so. Yeah. I couldn't tell if that was me or him. Hey, Scott, don't know if you can hear us, but you're cutting out.
Yeah.
Do you have your HD video
Sorry.
on so we can see you in high def? Maybe just put it to a lower setting.
No, it's all the same. So basically, if you're packed full for your schedule and it's difficult for you to continue to do the shadowing, I would say that's not that important, especially if you've got a good amount of shadowing hours already and you're able to reflect on those hours and stuff like that. Then I would say, full-time job, you might look for some clinical hours in addition, but otherwise I think you'd be okay not to shadow anymore.
Well, and just identifying what it may be that is keeping you from matching. Because obviously, you did an interview, you had an application that they felt was competitive and gave them some good information. And so maybe what would it be that kept you from matching, or, kind of some self-reflection there. If it was, lack of clinical or hands-on experience or something like that, that may be something that they would have identified ahead of the interview, but not necessarily. So if you need to schedule time with one of us, we can dig in to the application if you want us to try to see if we can identify some high-yield areas to focus on, to kind of direct your time, especially if it's limited in your schedule. We could definitely do that. We do it all the time. But
and I would say, Andrew, if you want to email me at scott@mapped.com, then I'll try to ask some additional questions and we can have a little bit of a conversation.
Yeah. But waiting on match is a good thing.
Yep.
Positive thoughts.
Yes.
Positive thoughts from us.
Yes.
In that for you too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap up there. So as Courtney was just alluding, we do have one-on-one advising with both Courtney and Scott, as well as other team members. Both of them are getting pretty close to full hourly application cycle, but lots of short-term things. So if you just want to book half an hour with them, you can do that. Basically, anything and everything we offer, you can find from medicalschoolhq.net. So that's the easy place to start. Application review is there. You can do half an hour of strategy, of school lists, of, hey, a few people had written in to say they were worried about their GPA trends. Any and all of those conversations. Sometimes half an hour with an advisor will clear up a world of concerns. And that is obviously a paid service, but I do also want to remind you guys that if you go to premedworkshop.com, we're holding free pre-med workshops now about twice a month. We just did a personal statement one about the seed, which is like that first moment of getting into healthcare. This week, we're focusing on watering events. So that's like the additional experiences that confirm your desire. And these are live workshops. These are not lectures. You sign up, you get to submit us some paragraphs, and we will do anonymous group review. So you can get feedback without your essay being outed. So it's an amazing free service to take advantage of. Highly recommend you go to premedworkshop.com and check out what's there.
Yeah. We get to offer a lot of free stuff, which is awesome, like this. But yeah, for those granular details and you want feedback to you specifically, where we do a screen share with your application, we parse through the whole thing, we talk about your timing, your secondaries, we look through your narratives and stuff like that. You may think that 30 minutes isn't a lot. It isn't, but we can move through that material. If you have it up and available, we can move through that material just because we've looked at thousands of applications and kind of, give our honest feedback. It could be that you are perfectly qualified. It's just the cycle, or there could be something fairly easily identifiable that would at least help you or could have been a factor in how the cycle went down, and having that insight. We love to share it. And I think that's probably why a lot of us joined. This is to be able to get out on the front end before we're having to tell you no, to help guide you in what you can do to strengthen the application. So hopefully this session was informative and you guys enjoyed it. We will see you again next week, and we'll see you at our workshops, and we'll see you in our academy where we do group advising. We'll see you in our one-on-ones, in our map chat, in the Mapped app, and everywhere else. Podcasts, we're taking over on all platforms. So have a wonderful weekend. Happy Valentine's Day late to everyone. We know that sometimes this can be a challenging time, especially for pre-med, since you guys are so busy and sometimes social life is a bit neglected. So we are here for you. We support you. Good luck this week. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.